I'm going to show you how to soak dry beans. This is a very easy thing to do, and it does save on some costs, and it does add a little bit of extra flavor that you can incorporate on your own. So this is soaking red beans. For this exercise, we're going to be making red beans and rice. And so we have here some dry, small red beans. And I have, for this, it's about 2.5 quarts of water for a pound of dry beans in the stores. A lot of times they'll sell you beans, dry beans in a pound, and then you can just soak them in 2.5 quarts of water. And what I'm doing here also is I'm going to be doing, this is 4 pounds of beans, and I'm using 2.5 gallons of water. And to that, I'm going to be adding this is 5 ounces of salt. So what this is going to do is help keep the beans intact and some of the integrity of the beans, so they're not popped and mushy, and the starches on the inside don't cook and expand before the outer shell does. Now these beans have been washed and picked through for the most part. And so here I have 2.5 gallons of water and 5 ounces of salt. And then I'm going to add the dry beans. You can come back after maybe, I'm going to soak these for 24 hours, and then I'm going to drain the water off, give them a rinse, and then they're going to be cooked. So this is not really part of the cooking process, this is just this pre-soaking process. And it's very important to keep some of the integrity of the bean so it doesn't blow up on you and the skins don't break and you have just mushy beans. So you can come back after 8 hours or so and overhaul or stir this up a little bit to ensure that the salt is evenly distributed. But all you're going to do now is put a lid on top and then put these in the refrigerator or cooler, and then come back after about 8 hours, give them a little stir, and then let them go the remaining of the time, and then drain them, rinse them, and then you can cook them. All right, so we've soaked the beans for 24 hours, we rinsed them, drained them, and now we have our red beans that have been soaked in a little bit of salted water. And now what we're going to do is put the elements together. This is 4 pounds of beans, so I'm going to do these in 2 batches with a pressure cooker. And you can use, you don't need an electric one, you can use one on the stove. They sell, oftentimes you can find these at garage sales, these pressure cookers, just to make sure it can seal properly. But we are at 7,000 feet here, and cooking them in a pressure cooker is an absolute must for beans to fully cook and gelatinize the starches. It would take hours and hours and hours, up to 10, 12 hours to cook these without a pressure cooker, and it's not a very efficient use of time. Even in a crock pot, it does not work very well. I've tried all those, and it's just the pressure cooker is the way to go with beans when you're up this high. So what we have here is in the pot we have half of the beans, and then we're going to put a half a clove of garlic in there, just like this, as well as a smoked ham hock right in the water. And I'm also going to put in a little bit of salt here as well. There is some salt in the ham hock, but I'm going to put in maybe a tablespoon of salt along with it. That's going to help keep the beans nice and creamy. Okay, and then we'll put the lid on, and we will have set these for pressure cooking, and they should be done in about an hour. So versus 12 hours, it really makes a huge difference. And then I'll get all these cooked, and then we'll have some cooked red beans that we can use for a lot of different varieties. We can use them with beans and rice. We're going to do red beans and rice, New Orleans style, with andouille sausage and peppers and celery and things like that. So we'll come back for that in a little bit. All right, so this is the demonstration on cooking red beans and rice. This was a request by our students, and they wanted to have some kind of New Orleans tasty treat. So we kind of made it work for 7,000 feet because we have some different challenges up here. So we showed you how to soak the beans. We showed you how to cook the beans with the ham hock and the roasted garlic cloves and all that. And now we have all our ingredients together. We're just going to assemble. So let's go over the ingredients. We have onion. We have, this is the cut up ham hock, all the meat and skin from the ham hock and all the fat goodness. We have andouille sausage, celery, peppers and onions. And then for our spices, we have bay leaf, thyme, and some Cajun seasoning, and then some black pepper, and then we may add some hot sauce at the end as you like. So I'm gonna kind of assemble this using classic French technique. We're going to start in our pot. We have in here some pork fat that is rendered and nice and clear. And in that, I'm going to give a little bit of color around here, so it's kind of in between a sweat and a saute. I'm not going to get too much caramel notes on there, but I do want to soften them quite a bit so they're very tender when you're eating it. So I'll put the onions in first. And this is 8 ounces of pork fat with a pound of small diced onion. So what I want to kind of touch on here is the big difference between sweating and sauteing, and that's what I want you to walk away with. When we're sweating onions, we're cooking them over medium-low heat with a little bit of fat, no color, and we're developing candy-like sweetness. When we're sauteing, it's a higher heat, you'll actually hear it. What we're doing is we are developing color, we're developing texture, and we're also sealing in flavors and aromas, and we're also developing more caramel-like notes. So those are two very distinct, different techniques, and you can go and watch the video that's on the channel about sweating versus sauteing. You'll understand a little bit more about what we're doing. All right, so we're gonna let this sweat for about 10-12 minutes, and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Right now, they're very white and firm looking, and all I smell is heavenly smell of pork fat with these raw onions, not much candy or caramel-like notes at this point. But we'll come back and we'll show you what they look like. All right, the onions have sweated for about 10-12 minutes, and I got a little bit of color on there, just like a light caramel, and this is what they're looking like now. They're cooking in all this wonderful beef fat that's going to get absorbed by all these other ingredients as well as the beans. So we really tried to cook these onions, almost melt them slowly so they absorb some of that pork fat in there and sweeten up and provide some wonderful caramel-like notes, a little bit of candy-like notes, as well as very soft texture. It'll become like this bulby aroma, this background texture that we'll add in there. Now what I'm going to do is turn up the heat just a little bit, and I'm going to add some of the spices now. So here I'm going to add 4 bay leaves. So I'm just going to add those in there whole because I'm going to take them out later. So 4 bay leaves. This is about a teaspoon of dry thyme. When you're using spices and herbs, it's best, especially for herbs, if you're doing them, if they're dry, to add them in the beginning of the cooking process rather than at the end, so they can bloom and saturate and give off all their essential oils. If they're fresh, you want to add them right at the end before the guest experience. And I'm going to add here a little bit of seasoning. This is a Cajun seasoning. I'm going to use this almost like salt, a little bit in the beginning. Oh, that smells so good. Whoa. Okay, that's just really smelling good. So that, again, that's going to perfume the onions and start to, the essential oils are going to start to get into the pork fat that's in there. And now I'm going to add some celery. It's about a pound of celery, as well as some peppers and onions. I chose, these are about medium size, two red peppers and 2 green peppers. If you want to learn how to dice these up properly, you can go to the video that we have on how to cut peppers. And if you wanted to see how to do the onions, there's another video that you can go check out. That's how to slice an onion and dice an onion properly. So I'm going to add the peppers and onions. So we have the onions in there. We have the celery. We have the peppers. And, oh, that smells so good. So again, I'm just sweating this. You can smell the perfumed bay leaf in there. The last few things we're going to add, I have the ham hock, smoked ham hock that we cooked with the beans in the pressure cooker. Because remember, at 7,000 feet, if we cooked this all from the base style, from the soaked beans up, it would take 12 hours to cook. And everything would be destroyed by the time we got to that point. So the way we address that is we cook the beans separately with the garlic, with the smoked ham hock, and some seasoning to push all that smoky, garlicky aroma into the beans and the liquid. So we're building this a little bit not as traditionally as you might if you're down at sea level, but again, we have to take into account the environment of where we are. So as these celery and peppers are going to be sweating for about another 7-8 minutes or so, I'm just trying to soften them a little bit. I'm not really trying to cook them too hard. I just want them to sweeten up a little bit as well as soften in texture. And then we'll come back and we're going to add our meat components and then the beans with the smoked ham hock and then the garlic in there. So we'll come back and add that in about 7-8 minutes. All right, our peppers and celery have sweated for about 8 minutes, and now we have something that looks like this wonderful onion that's melted and soft and translucent. And the peppers are just touched with some heat, just starting to get soft and sweet, but they're also holding some of their texture and color. The next thing to add is some fresh garlic. And the reason why I'm adding it now is I didn't want to burn the garlic and get these acrid, bitter tastes and aromas out of it. So I'm going to add the garlic right now because I wanted the fresh garlic. And a little trick with garlic when you're using it, if you simply take the garlic clove and give it a crush, so you take your clove and you just kind of crack it a little bit, and you add it into your product and then take it out later, you're going to have these background notes of garlic. It'll be less, it'll be very subtle, less pronounced. The more you cut the garlic up, the more you're combining two separate components within the garlic cells that make up this garlic aroma. So if you want your garlic to be more of a background note, just crack it a little bit and then toss it in whole and fish it out towards the end of the cooking process. If you want like Chuck Norris garlic, then you just chop that thing up and you smear it and mash it and you make a paste, and that's going to be up front in your face garlic. So you can control how you want your garlic to play out in your dish. So here I have it chopped fairly fine, and I'm adding it fresh like this. Oh, it smells amazing. You can see the little garlic flecks in there, and the oils are just starting to come out and flavor that pork fat that's in there. Now I'm going to add the chopped up smoked ham hock that we used when we cooked the beans. This is all the meat and the skin and the fat, everything but the bone. So I'm going to add that in there. As well as, this is 2 pounds of andouille sausage. And all I want to do here is kind of warm it through, let some of that fat come out. It's already cooked, everything's cooked in there, just trying to warm it through. And you can see how beautiful that looks already. Oh, it smells heavenly. Porky, got the garlic in there, the bulby onions, the caramel notes from the onions. It just smells amazing. All right, now that we have all the elements in there for the base, I'm going to let this cook for about another 5 minutes just to warm and cook the fat out of the andouille a little bit, and then we'll come back and I'm going to taste it, adjust if we need more Cajun seasoning, maybe a little black pepper, and then we're going to add our beans that we cooked previously. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes. All right, it's been about 5 minutes. Our andouille is starting to weep out some of its fat in there. I'm going to give it a little taste and see where we're at. I have a little bit of everything on there. We're going to give it a taste. We're checking for seasoning and doneness with textures. Delicious, sweet, smoky, salty, garlic aroma, a lot of onion in there. It needs a little bit of black pepper. The sharpness from this gives you a little bit of the different scratch on your throat. It also lends a black pepper aroma coming through there. So it's always best when you're using black pepper to grind it fresh. You really lock in and seal the essential oils, that pepper, and then get it right in there just when you need it. I think it needs a little bit more Cajun seasoning. I'm just going to put a little bit of this in there to start. And then we'll add some at the end on top as we need it. Ooh, yeah, the vinegar is nice. Especially with a rich dish like this. You have very rich beans and rich sausages and lots of fat. It's nice to have a vinegar element, some acid to clear your palate, draw out saliva in your mouth to clear off all the fat and richness in there. I know a lot of people with this, sometimes they'll serve even vinegar or a vinegary hot sauce right on top to break up the richness of the dish. So we add a little bit of Cajun seasoning, black pepper, and a vinegary hot sauce. Let's give it another taste. Because remember, it's taste, season, taste, not season, season, whoops. So keep that in mind. The vinegar from this really helps balance it out. Now I'm going to add the beans with the bean liquid in there and cook this down until it's nice and tight and thick. Not too long, maybe about 30-40 minutes, just so the flavors can meld. And then we'll come back and show you what that looks like when that's done. But here's what it looks like when we add the beans in there. We're just letting all these aromas and the fat, the pork fat in there meld and marry in here and get really comfortable together. We're just going to let this simmer for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes like this. And then we'll come back and give it a taste and see where it's at. See you in a little bit. All right. The beans have been cooking with the andouille and the ham hock and the slightly caramelized onions and peppers and celery, and it is just looking so delicious now. Now this is one of those dishes that if you're going to make this, it's best to let it kind of sit overnight a day or so, kind of like cassoulet or any of those types of dishes that benefit by just marrying for a night and just blending well together. You'll get a little bit deeper of a aroma and taste profile. But I wanted to show you what it looks like plated up here. Here we have just some simple rice. When I do rice for these types of dishes, I like to almost cook it a little bit more with a little bit more water so the rice is fully saturated and it lends a more full feel, so it's not so dry. And then I'll show you what it looks like plated up. And so I'll take some of this wonderful beans and rice and put it right in the middle of this dish. And this is just basic rice. Real simple. And then I'm going to garnish this with just a little bit of scallion, green onion. And it gives it just a fresh, bright, sharp, and onion aroma to it. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of this. Some people put just straight apple cider vinegar on here. I like the little kicks of the vinegar, so just put this around on the rice, just a little bit, and there you have it. A little nod to New Orleans and Louisiana for your wonderful dish, red beans and rice for our lumberjacks.